here to celebrate the opening of the No Small Measure broadside portfolio. And we've got several of the poets involved in the portfolio here to read for us today, so it's a very special occasion. I thought I'd tell you guys a little bit about the No Small Measure broadside portfolio, and I'll start from a very personal, this is what I would call a confession. I had no idea what a broadside was until Ezekiel Black over here said, hey, what about having an exhibit of broadsides in the gallery? So since then, I have become a huge fan and absolutely love the whole notion of broadsides. So how many of you guys are familiar with the term broadside? I bet you all are, right? So a broadside, we have a little bit of the history of it on the wall in the gallery. But it's a tradition of printing one page to broadcast. In the past, it was about political events or news before people had Twitter and you could send out to everybody what was going on. But nowadays, a broadside has evolved into a term that means a page printed, a poem printed on one page, embellished with visual elements, or sometimes not visual elements, sometimes just the way that the poem is placed on the page can be enough. And these guys know far more about the history of broadsides and what a broadside is than I do, so I probably shouldn't be the one to tell you. But I am going to tell you that No Small Measure was curated by Ezekiel Black and Margot Ecke of Smoky Road Press, who unfortunately is not here because she's teaching a letterpress and workshop in Penland, North Carolina. But they put a tremendous amount of work into this broadside portfolio, and it will be on display here, Oconee campus, Dahlonega campus, Cumming campus, and the Forsyth County Public Library system. We were fortunate enough to get a grant from the Forsyth County Arts Alliance. So, in thanks, we have donated an edition of the portfolio to the Forsyth County Public Library system. And Zeke Black, the curator of poets for this project, is going to read first, and he will announce the rest of the poets. And I want to remind you that if you want co-curricular credit, please just give me a card to scan. So Zeke Black.
So if you haven't had a chance to look at the exhibit yet, it's really amazing sort of what they do with all the different poems. So my poem was called Security Force, and it's from a manuscript called Letters from the Junta. So let me give you a little bit of background about the manuscript. So whenever I teach 1102, I usually do this activity where I bring in like a New York Times edition. You usually see them around campus. So I'd bring in the New York Times and a bunch of Sharpies and basically have the students choose an article and then basically redact words from that article to basically carve the poem out. So it was a really fun activity. I think we usually did it before spring break when everyone's sort of brain dead. And while the students did it, I would do it too just because it's really fun. So the first time I did it, I basically wrote a poem for my then girlfriend, now wife. So it was like a Valentine's poem. So I'm going to start with that one. The Minimalist. Even the fears never rise. They're temperamental. A souffle is a souffle, bitten on Valentine's Day. Your significant other is a mixture of flour and fat. Do not cheat. She's ready to bake. Cover her with plastic wrap and stand in the kitchen. So, whenever my wife tells her friends and coworkers that I write poetry, they're always like, oh, that's so sweet. And she's like, he's not that kind. So it's sort of bittersweet for her because she wants these, like nice tender poems, and I just don't write them. So this is the first poem in the series in the manuscript, and it's called The Minimalist. So it's a reminder for me to basically keep the poems very slender, very spare, So it's almost like an ars poetica. If you look at the poem in the gallery, you'll see that the poem almost looks like it's falling apart, where there's like single word stanzas, like the punctuation is sort of in the wrong place. Some of the words are even like split apart with spaces. So when you look at the poems in the manuscript, they are sort of like, falling apart, very minimalistic, that kind of thing. So if you go back to the title, it's called Letters from the Junta. And if you don't know what a junta is, it's basically a military group that controls a government. So it's almost like a military dictatorship. So when I wrote these, all these poems are pulled from the New York Times, so there's a lot of sort of like political stories, that kind of stuff. So when I wrote this, I sort of imagined it as being almost like a diatribe from sort of a military dictator, far overseas. So when you read these things, they have a crazed political bend to them. They seem sort of dated, they sound like a tirade, that kind of stuff. So the very first poem in the manuscript is called The Uncertain Trumpet. So let me read that. Oh, sacrifice the broken bed. Oh, offer the question that lies in the grain. There, rot is the burden borne by an axe. Oh, to save even the down is a sin. I bestride ash like a colossus. I am omnibus. This perverse bed did muddle the old order. I blow the trumpet. So you can sort of think about that as like an opening salvo to the manuscript of this sort of like, crazed military dictator. So I'm just going to read a couple more of those sort of like political poems. Push. Washington, once in a generation, reflects his own reshaping. He would arrest the mouse from farmers and trim the farm. He would shrink from that which some consider overly rosy. Some honesty. President Washington was blind. George's axe cut more than that bush. A pledge is imperative. Without it, louts could lose faith in the dollar. Control is necessary to sustain the economy when it comes. Oh, the folly of unconstrained knowledge. But one part doesn't burden us. He was the first president from Bama. On benefits. $1 is a rank bill, and the Republic of Alabama protests its issue. For Mr. September, who is not able to draw his wife, dollars make a person feral. Such people might be unreasonable, willing to sacrifice the lives of so many Texans. All right, this is one of those poems where the title bleeds into the actual text. So it's called Eat, but when I read it, you'll see how it blends in. Eat lead and sing for crisis once again. A savage people and visions come, and a rope called a tent dangerous. Mr. L was found in the backyard last time. Mr. L said the host was not strong in the arms. Mr. S expressed that if this lead were to storm the liver, a new constitution could be devised. Mr. D warned that no one should play around with a Republica. Water, the oceans. So, in a single day, a diver turned into gas. A grandmother remembers the man around 60 years ago tanning. The end no one saw. Here's the problem. Most divers alarmed Cuba. Now, only footprints exist, crippling light cast onto a rug. So, when I was really getting into this series of poems, I would redact them from the newspaper, and then just to make sure that they're sort of like solidified in my mind, I would type them on a manual typewriter, which to me sort of emphasized sort of the outdated sort of political philosophy of this, deranged dictator. Or if you just look at the redacted poems themselves, like the redacted articles, there's all this like blacked out text, almost like a declassified document. So that plus the typewriter script of it, made it look sort of old and 1960s, kind of like communist, that kind of thing. So the reason I say this is because with this next poem, I finished it and typed it, and that weekend I was going to go visit my girlfriend, but now wife, in Kentucky. She was going to seminary. So I typed up 4 or 5 poems and dropped them into an envelope and put her address on it, but I didn't put a return address. And I drove to a nearby town, Murrayville, and mailed it, and then raced up to Kentucky, got there, and then was there when she opened the letter. So you can imagine that all the stuff you've heard so far, she's reading this letter that's written on an old typewriter with no return address. And here's what it says. To help. It's been clear for months until this week, when came the writers. The plan is to pay a tribute, 8%. That part of the proposal has caused the most controversy. Many argue that such reward would but set them to kill. The city's dismantled. And she read that while I was sitting in the kitchen watching her, and she was not happy. So I'll read a couple more, and then I'll wrap it up. Chief of coffins. I in coffins lie as a blanket on a chief. I think about giving a news conference. Renewed by the privacy and dignity of the dead, I demur. But I'll be perfectly honest. A division from the dead is a conclusion that we should not presume. We should let them lace the swift. What is this casket other than a can to cook hot dogs in? All right, second to last one. Man looking away. The thigh bone jutting out of a night was the territory of Poland. Men, women, and children inhabit the city along the wound. All skulls have bullet holes. Nowhere is this more true than in Germany. And I'll finish up with the poem that was actually part of the broadside. So it's called Security Force. So when I was writing this manuscript, I was reading a lot of E.E. Cummings and Emily Dickinson. I read both of their complete works, which if you notice, they're about that big each. So one thing I like about Emily Dickinson's work is that it follows the ballad meter, but she tends to sort of corrupt it near the end. The poem almost tends to fall apart right there in the last couple of words or couple of lines. And that's sort of what happens in Security Force. It's rhythmed, but that rhythm just completely goes out the door by the end of it. And it creates this sort of strange tension, or at least I think so. Security Force. Training a roach to train a bee, to train a seal to ply the sea, keeps the cobra with the hawk who spent his life in uniform. When the roach understands the need for a homeland, we have come to accept that. And that's it. All right. Anybody? All right, so please welcome Gloria Bennett.
All right, well, I just have 3 short pieces to read, and I guess these were probably the last 3 that were published. So anyway, the first one is called Strangers. My daughter plunders the attic, looking for clothes I wore in the 80s. What she finds is a sepia-tone portrait, the one thing I kept to remember you. Who is this, she asks, looking at a face she's never seen before. Why does he look so familiar? As I take it from her, old memories rise up to consume me, and I recall your wavy black hair, those dark, piercing eyes, the venom in your words, my need for your approval. Even now, decades later, I still search for your face among the strangers I meet on the streets every time I visit my mother's relatives. And I fear the day an older man approaches me and tells me he is my father. An Evening in Paris. This is a happier piece. This was dedicated to my grandmother. To keep me from getting into her perfume and wasting it, my grandmother gave me the empty bottles to play with. Evening in Paris was my favorite. Cobalt blue glass with worn silver labels. At the bathroom sink, I would fill them with water so I could imitate my grandmother. In my world of pretend, joined by a handsome young prince, I strolled the streets of Paris. Years later, on a trip with my lover, I toured the City of Lights and dined near the Eiffel Tower. And I remember my grandmother, a farm wife who bore 10 children, who never had the money to indulge in little luxuries, let alone visit other countries. I longed to tell her about my evening in Paris. And then the one I did for the broadside. It's called The Wedding Dress. In the same voice she used for calling me to dinner, my mother announced one night that she was getting married. To prove it, she led me to the bedroom she and I shared and pulled out what she said was a wedding dress. I thought it should be long and white, like the one the bride doll wore in the 5 and dime store window, but it was blue, like the ocean when a hurricane threatens the coast. I imagined my role in the wedding, dressed like a princess from one of my paper doll books. But Mama reminded me life was no fairy tale. A wedding was what you got when you mixed a man, a woman, and a moon.
I don't know why I always have to follow the prize-winning poet. I'm Kathryn Dodson. This is an oldie but goodie, my favorite poem. It's called Quid Est, which is Latin for who is he. And the few poems that I've written in my life have come out of profound moments of clarity for me. And one of them, when I was young, I was sitting in church with my mother, and I realized that even though we read from the same Bible and we went to the same church every week, her God didn't look anything like my God. And that was just an epiphany for me. You spent it all, every hour of your life exiled, lamenting and choking on Proverbs like a cold, hard biscuit left over from breakfast this morning. You ran. You fled from his grace like Hosea's whore. Year after year you bent till you broke, and you cried out to God, and he roared out his answer, vengeance, brimstone. You looked at yourself through his eyes, and you saw a spider. I ran too, from him and from you, but he chased me like Lebanon's lover, whispering, begging me to come home. And when I was too weary to run anymore, I hid from his face like a coin that rolls under the couch with the dust and the dog hair. He searched for me. Year after year, he bent down, sweeping up under that couch like he was looking for a pearl buried deep in all that muck. Of course he found me, curled up in the corner. His heart was breaking as he picked up all those pieces of my shattered mind. But when he looked at me, covered with mites and crucified blood, he smiled. I looked just like a son who had spent it all on a new penny. This is, if you haven't seen it, The Women Who Write, our Volume 1 anthology. Yes. So I thought I would plug it today. I'm of the generation that was affected greatly by the Vietnam War. Some of you read about that in your history class. And this is another memory from childhood, making fudge. That Christmas, we made fudge and packed boxes to send across the world to the torrid jungles of Vietnam while snow fell on the evergreens outside our kitchen window in Detroit. Mama, what if it doesn't keep? I asked. Mama stirred the hardening chocolate, clanging her biggest spoon against the side of the pot while I threw in the crushed nuts, one handful at a time. She said, it won't matter. When they get this fudge, they'll know we remember them. I remember them. Butch and Jimmy and Jerry Wayne and their neighbor Donnie on Aunt Sissy's porch, playing guitar and singing, "Shake it up, baby, now." They sweated and smoked, joked and jawed, as old men tapped in tune to a strange and powerful beat of distant fields and battle cries, twist and shout, while we teeny girls twisted in bare feet on the hard dirt and lightning bugs danced in time to the beat of katydid wings. At dawn's first blush, they boarded a bus bound for basic training, and from that night until war's end, lightning bugs danced to the beat of katydid wings, alone in the darkness of Aunt Sissy's yard. We had it all. They told us, the graduating girls of 1975, we could have it all, and we did. We had college classes and menial jobs at the neighborhood dry cleaners with numbered tabs and safety pins, and at movie theaters with fresh popcorn for dinner until the manager brought in the cheerleaders rated X. So we moved on to country buffets with fried okra and sweet tea and change left on red and white checked tables. And then to country bars with truckers who held their Bud Light close to the chest and bikers who were the first to tat up after Nam, where the beer cost 90 cents at the bar and $1 on the floor, and we paid our rent in dimes. We had husbands and children and hamburger helper and Kool-Aid pops of cherry red that stayed bright spots on secondhand couches, and we had diapers and puppies and fevers and dirty towels and butterfly kisses and mamas and papas lullabies and vomit and more towels, and bosses who insinuated our children must be disease-ridden because we spent our vacation days in pediatricians' offices because one of the kids swallowed a penny to get out of school or because the babysitter quit midweek before payday. We had teenagers who lied to us so they wouldn't hurt us and gave us long nights and crow's feet and told us we didn't know anything about love. We had daughters who gave away their precious jewels to losers with no jobs and World of Warcraft addictions. Daughters who picked up other insidious addictions that we thought we had buried long ago, and we spent long days and longer nights on our knees begging for their lives. And then they returned as friends, independent, lovelier than ever, carrying only our best attributes on their strong, slender shoulders. And we had sons who clung to our legs in public places and when they were little boys, and then when they turned 14, they wouldn't walk with us in the mall anymore because we danced in public. And we remarked that if the mall officials didn't want to encourage dancing in public places, why was music playing? And we watched as the world broke our sons' tender hearts time and again, and they fought not to let the world see their hurt, but we knew. And we prayed for just the right heart to come along. And our boys became men who could carry the weight of the world on their strong shoulders. We had more classes and a better job and a better paycheck that covered less of our bills, but our rights were vindicated and we had a room of our own. And our children had children and told us we didn't know anything about life. We had the loneliness of neglect and lies and aches and pains and the company of a few good women who shared with us their stories and chicken salad on croissant and became our only friends because they too had it all. This is the broadside poem. I have been painting watercolor pieces of poetic imagery all of my life, 20 years at least, half my life, less than half. This was the first time that an artist, a visual artist, made a representation of my poetry. So this was a great experience for me. Anyway, this is called Rough Waters. Shepherds long to sit beside still waters, placid pools of grace-filled glass, reflecting sky blues and peaceful greens. But I prefer restless waters, moving masses of swirling mud, bringing signs of life from upstream of a farmer bent over dirt rows of corn, or distant footsteps washed through metal circles. I prefer living waters, dancing around boulders, carrying bits of ancient fallen trees, sometimes carving new paths from jagged banks and weak bottoms, mysteries of dark, deep currents, holding down secrets, then surfacing only to be buried again in the uncertain course of rolling waves. I prefer turbulent waters and storms and tempests and the unknown bends of rushing swells. I prefer to think that I will reach down one day and clasp a tumbling broken branch that will carry my restless soul to a distant hopeful shore and another living river.
Whoa, the spotlights are incredible. Hitting the timer so I don't take too long. I want to thank Ezekiel Black and Margot Ecke for allowing me to be part of this wonderful project with such great poets and artists. And Sarah Owen, who's not here except in her work, for her vision. And I'm going to focus on the readings today, briefly, I hope, from a collection that I wrote, Kishii, and I'll focus on the cluster poems that are leading up to in some way or connected in some way with. I wish I could even see you guys. I'm usually like looking at people like, wait, there you are. Okay. Focus leading up to the one that Sarah Owen chose, and the first one is A Rebel in Blue, and it was inspired from an experience of my first year of moving up here from Miami, which you'd think would be south, but believe me, it's not south. And I was walking through something at a library. I'm just gonna do this to you guys. I was walking through a library turnstile and I went in a different direction than most people, and I heard someone go, "She's a rebel." And it didn't quite make me understand what a rebel was, but this is A Rebel in Blue. The dress was supposed to be white, with just a ripple of ruffles, glint of beading, swirl of lace or tucked bodice, also white, silk, satin, organza. My best friend, the debutante, who invited me to the ball, visited the couturier with bridal styles and had her underwear fitted, also white, and a skirt just hitting the ground, just allowing a curtsy. I went to a costume shop for my gown with a full flout of ruffles and a wide swaying, bell-clinging hoop skirt in scorn blue. I didn't dance with my best friend's father since he didn't ask me, averting his gaze when he and the other fathers marched, promenaded the room singing Dixie. One tall, dark, handsome young man did ask me to waltz, so we tripped, stubbed, flattened our feet black and blue. I almost had to throw rocks before he stopped trying to see me, refusing to believe a kiss is not a commitment. Years later, I saw a prom dress in a store window with a door-wide skirt, blown up purple loud, and thought, if I knew then what I know now, I'd do what I want all the time and never worry what people think. The next poem is called The Woman's Movement, and believe me, this is really true. It's based on something a student told me she did after attending one of my classes. In a college where women don't carry their own cafeteria trays, a tradition supported by some female instructors, one of whom wishes there were more rules like that so she wouldn't have to work. In a college where women have to show their ID cards for admittance to their dorm after midnight, but men don't, and letters get sent home to parents tallying the late night entries, and sororities have no house. In a college without lights in the dorm parking lots because the men watch over the women and keep them safe, where women think their fellow female students join the ROTC to meet men, and everyone calls the female instructors Miss, it's not surprising that learning sparks enlightenment, enkindling a woman to ignite and set ablaze her cotton bra just bought from Walmart, pink with little teddy bears cavorting, that burns so intensely, fires up with such velocity, flames progress so rapidly up the hook's center panel, cups to the shoulder strap in her hand, that she rushes to her dorm window, flings out the fireball, craning forward to follow its free-falling cosmic impact on a bush that also catches fire. And this is a poem also about teaching at a military college, and my next to last, that I'll read today. Students recording material, I, their CO, teacher, keeping balance amid women in camouflage, men in cover, covering material in obliquity. Our reconnaissance, a high-value target of identification, asking, what are you afraid of? Being women, what are you afraid of, men? Being women, what are you? Afraid of men being. Women, what are you afraid of? Men being women, what are you? Afraid of being. Women. We reached commonality. Make safe this unitized course load. Class dismissed. Sorry, I'm ham. Oh, you're too kind. All right, and this, I promise, is my last for today. And this is the one that Sarah Owen chose. And it's also based on a classroom experience. I know you guys are in the classroom, so I'm hoping you'll identify. It was an older woman, and she brought 2 etiquette books with her, one directed for men, one directed for women. And they were exactly the same, except for one difference. And this is the difference that I focus on in the poem called Etiquette Rules for Young Ladies, which is posing as a found poem, but really is not. When eating, use utensils from outside in. When served unfamiliar food, sample. When calling, identify yourself. When receiving invitations, respond. When introduced, repeat new names. When conversing, express interest in others' lives. When receiving gifts, write thank yous. When alone, whether at home, in a parking garage, or in a crowded city street, be afraid. Even if you hold your purse tight against your body, always carry a small flashlight and pepper spray, dress modestly, avoid eye contact, and wear a fake wedding ring. Thank you very much. Well, all good.
Oh, I see what you mean about the lights.
Yes, okay.
As BJ said, I want to thank Ezekiel and Margot for inviting me to be part of this project, and Beth Sale as well, the director of the galleries, who brought me into this. It's been very exciting, and I, of course, also want to thank Talia Ronstead, who did the broadside for my poem. So, oh, and I'm Kathryn Hinds, by the way, because you know that, but you don't. I'm Kathryn Hinds. Thank you for coming today. So, I'm going to read several poems from my collection, Candle, Thread, and Flute, which was published this past May. And the first poem is Snow Leopard, Bronx Zoo. My daughters, born here, play at stalking, chasing, mock attacks on twitching tails, pausing now to nuzzle deep my tolerant belly. We are on display, and humans stand to gawk at us and shout and mimic feline speech devoid of sense. Their emotions clear the bars with ease, and none of them feel fear. Although I have paws the size of small human heads and teeth their fingers' length. My daughters, bound over unnatural boulders to the tops of unnatural crags whose mitigated steepness assures survival, whose artifice conceals cage doors. We are blasphemously kept inside at night. I rise to pace with falseness underfoot as the keeper arrives with dead meat, unpungent flesh of birds that never graced my tameless mountains. Dear gods, if I could only hunt to smell the essence of the wind, to cock the ear for clues, to make myself invisible until the final rushing moment, the blood and broken neck, the earned feast. My daughters cannot learn this joy. Unwary mouthfuls seldom come within the bars, but on the other side, small, well-fatted humans point and bare their teeth at me. I bare my teeth, I taste my teeth, contract and expand like thunder. There is no answering flight. The bars halt me, and my prey stares. I settle, my eyes on it, all the while I consume what the keeper has brought. Imagination feeds me. Do y'all know the story of Cupid and Psyche? Well, you should. You should go read the story of Cupid and Psyche. Here's a preview. Psyche lying awake. And I should say, after I do this, this first section of this book is mainly persona poems. So, of course, the first poem I just read was in the persona of a mother snow leopard in the zoo. This is a persona poem in the voice of Psyche. Psyche lying awake. In this shuttered palace, neither moon nor torch has illumined my nights or lit on the eyes closed now in dreams beside me, on the arms that embraced, the pleasuring hands, and all the rest that my body, visionary of touch, uses to paint its portraits. The veil of night still hides his face, and though my fingertips have traced it, the thought that in daylight I might see and not know it, that thought robs me of contentment. The days have become less and less to me. Uninhabited days with their fine, empty rooms and their unpeopled gardens, nothing so worth seeing as the secret face of night. My spirit yearns for that alone. I will wake with bats, owls now, and leave the day to brighter creatures. What monster have I taken to myself, with nothing left for me but darkness? If I had a lamp, what I would not give for one moment in the light. Now for something a little lighter. Again, a persona poem. In this case, the persona that is speaking is my cat, Mr. Mittens. And this is called Tuxedo Cat's Haiku. 1. Evil chipmunk taunts. Trip, trip. He scurries away. The other side of the fence. 2. Lizard, you are mine. I stalk, I pounce. Oh, bother. Detachable tail. The next section of the book is about seasonal poems. So we just had the autumn equinox. So I'm going to read a poem about the spring equinox. And this begins with an epigraph from a Middle English lyric, which I just taught yesterday in my British literature class. So I guess that's why I feel like reading this. Spring, excuse me. There's something about spotlights. Spring equinox. No spring is the spray, all forlov, ik am so sick, het slepen in May. Reeling on the precipice of night and day, a sword edge, I find myself acute in my imbalance. Like the medieval lyricists, epidemically out of sync with the turning wheel of the seasons. We feel most strange when the world is blossoming and we remain tight shut against life. They put it all down to love sickness, those troubadours and minnesingers. Desire unfulfilled. We have no desire, or desire nothing of worth, or don't know what we desire. I can only speak for myself. I have been waiting for some Orphic hand to lead me out and away from the dead land. But I see in the now even light that I carry the darkness with me, and it is only I who have made it lifeless. And I guess I should finish with the poem that is in the exhibit. The broadside that Talia designed makes use of a traditional quilting pattern, which I believe is called Geese in Flight. And I thought it was a wonderful way to give visual form to this poem. In the fallow garden. Regrets embed themselves into a November twilight as I take clothes off the line, pin by pin, deliberate. A noisy arrow of geese calls my sight upward. Their passing draws away a dusty curtain. The wind plays a rattle of leaves. The sky promises stars. I remember falling in love and understand its limit.
Thanks everybody for coming out today, and I want to say thank you to the poets too. Thank you, Ezekiel Black, Gloria Bennett, Karen Dodson, BJ Robinson, and Kathryn Hinds for coming out. Yay! And you guys, there's a reception waiting for us out there, some food, and the art is in the gallery. You can see how the letterpress artists interpreted their poems and more. And if anybody has questions about letterpress technique, please feel free to ask me. Also, for those of you who are visually oriented, think about the way that the visual artists have responded to the poet's work, because the poet's work was complete when the visual artists got it. It was a collaboration in some ways, but we can talk more about that in the gallery if you guys want to. Thanks for coming out, everybody.